Hi there, DW Berman here. I just wanted to go over a couple of things in the with the compositing buffer exporter. I'm not going to go in depth because there's a lot that could be said about how to use this feature in Lightwave, and it has some room to grow and some room for improvement. And I know NewTek is the Lightwave group is looking for feedback. But anyway, I just wanted to give you a basic overview. Here's what the scene I'm working with. It's just kind of this is just a quick demo scene I threw together. It's kind of a pool with water flowing into it, and you can see down here in the water we have the reflection of the pool itself surrounding it. So let's take a look at the compositing buffer exporter. Go to the image processing window panel, and under add image filter you can add compositing buffer export. Now they used to have a compositing buffer, or they used to be what did they used to call it? There were two. There was a buffer exporter and a buffer viewer. Render buffer export, I think. Yeah, down there at the bottom. You can't really see it. It's off your screen. It says render buffer export and render buffer view. This replaces those. So right now I have the destination set to the image viewer. So when I hit F9, the image shows up in the image viewer. And to see the different buffers, you click on layer. There's nothing there because I didn't actually select anything. So let's come down here and do shaded reflection and shaded diffuse. So hit F9. And there we go. Now we have some extra layers in here. We have a shaded diffuse and a shaded reflection. Okay, so what if you had your compositor come in and says, I want to isolate just the water. Now you could do an object ID mask, but in this case I'm going to just remove this whole pool from the reflection buffer completely and just render out a separate pass. So to do that I can just, instead of making a version of the object that doesn't have the reflection turned on, I can just come in here to my Objects tab and just deselect the pool so it's no longer active. And now when I hit F9, you'll see that we get the just the water by itself isolated in these buffers. So you can tweak that layer in isolation. And of course you'd probably want to do the exact opposite for the pool itself. We have other options for destinations. We have image files. I haven't really figured out these yet, but we have the main two ones are image viewer and image files. You can select your image type, and I'll point out that at the top we have multi-FP and multi-half for OpenEXR. These are multi-layer EXRs. So this gives you the capability of saving multiple buffers into one EXR file, kind of like what EXR Trader does, only EXR Trader has more features, but this is free. And these here where you see FP and half, FP stands for floating point, and half stands for half of that, so this is actually 32-bit and 16 bits per channel. Anyway, if you don't know what that means, I have another video on that. We see this subfolder option here. Well, first of all, we see the save on F9 renders and save on F10 renders. So let's set an output, and let's see, I think I have a folder set up for this. Yeah, we'll do new folder. I thought I renamed that, but oh well, whatever. Test render. Okay, so before we get into the subfolders, let's just set this to JPEG, and some of you are cringing because you don't actually want to use JPEG in production. It's a lossy format, although at 100% you don't really lose much. 100% quality, and that's all Lightwave saves, but not the best format to use for compositing by any stretch. So I still have it set to image file. Nope, I have it set to image files. You notice that now I don't have the layers here in the image viewer, but what I can do is I can open up the file itself. Let's see, where was that? Miscellaneous projects, new folder, and there we have our buffers. And you might notice that yes, these do look different than the image previewer. It might have something to do with the color color settings, the color profile settings. But there are some buffers that just render completely differently, like the motion X and motion Y. They look completely different in the image viewer than they do from the saved file. So you have to be aware of that. Okay, now let's say I click on Save the Subfolders, and let's just rename this so I have a slightly different name. And I'll render again. What happens? Why did I close that window? Do you guys have that problem where you're closing windows when you don't really need to close them and probably should leave them open? Yeah. Okay, so even though I clicked Save to Subfolders, it didn't actually save it to a subfolder. The reason is you have to come over here to the subfolders and check in this Use Custom thing. Now, I don't know why it's Use Custom and you have custom folder name, because to me this says use the custom folder name, but instead it actually just enables saving to the subfolder. It makes a new subfolder for each thing. So here we have new subfolders. A nice thing with this though is in LightWave 11.5 they added the ability to change these. So if you wanted to give custom names for these things, like instead of, say, camera tangent space normal, you could just name it normal, and that doesn't change the file name, I don't believe, but it does change the folder name. So it might give you a little more clarity on in your pipeline. I did it again, didn't I? Always closing things accidentally. And you know what? I did not check that folder, so it did not show up. Oh, I checked the folder, but I didn't check the buffer itself. Okay, need to have the buffer checked in order for it to show up. So yeah, there you go. There are a few basics of the compositing buffer exporter, maybe to get you ready to experiment. One thing I want to caution you about though is if you change your object name or replace an object using the replace objects menu, or I guess probably if you just rename the object itself. Let me hit save here. If you were to edit the Lightwave scene file in a text editor and change the objects out, here's what happens. Even if you just hit Shift S to save increment, now we have actually not Shift S. I want to increment the object, not the scene. Anyway, save object increment. You notice down here my object is now named pool v001. Up in here in the objects it's not named pool v001. And if I render this, actually let me set this back to image viewer. If I render this, let's see what we have. It looks fine. Now watch what happens when I reload the scene. I revert scene to last saved and come back in here to image processing and objects, and look, it's deselected. Now this is because we changed the file name and the compositing buffer export was not updated. So if you update your objects, you have to reload your scene and come back in here and check them off on the objects so that they are actually included. Otherwise, you won't. Otherwise, they won't show up in the buffer. So this is something I kind of ran across accidentally, and it's been annoying, but I figured it out eventually. So yeah, that's something you have to watch out for, especially if you change a thing, you change your object name and then you save it out and you send it to the render farm, and then all of a sudden you notice you're not getting everything in your image buffer. That's because this did not get updated. So yeah, that's the deal on that. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to this channel for more videos. Sorry this video is late, but sometimes the time gets away from me. Also, check out the stuff at liberty3d.com. There's some good tutorials over there. There's some good plugins for Lightwave, and I sell tutorials over there as well. So thanks for watching, and thanks for subscribing.